Good afternoon, viewers, and welcome to this exclusive interview that I'm having with the Vice President, Dr. Jagdeo. And the reason for this, as you know, from time to time we interact, and the interviews are about transparency with this administration. But in this case, there are some burning issues that have arisen, and the citizenry would like to know and would like to have the reassurance that the government is on track and what it is doing for the people. Also, this affords media houses to have an opportunity to hear what the Vice President has to say firsthand, where they can disseminate that information also. Dr. Jagdeo, thank you for this opportunity. I know today was a little rushed, but as a result of what happened last night, a number of persons reached out to me. A lot of supporters from the opposition are literally scared because they feel that they're not represented adequately. The worry in Guyana as we speak is the government having free rein? Where is the body, which is supposed to be the opposition, that is supposed to ensure that the government is transparent, they're accountable? As a result of actions of the opposition leader, utterances of the opposition leader yesterday at a function kept by the European Union, there's mass confusion even with the opposition supporters wondering what or how are they to be efficiently represented. And I want your assurances, or I want you to tell those people what they can expect from this government, since this government seems to be all alone with having to be transparent to itself, accountable to itself. Please, what assurances you have for the opposition supporters that what they can expect from this government?
Sure. So the incident last night should not cloud the vision of the People's Progressive Party. If anything, we have been consistent from the formation of the party to this moment about what we want to achieve for our country. A country that is united, where all of its people are making progress. A country that is free of discrimination, and we talk boldly about that, based on people's gender or their race or their religion. We believe in working for Guyana. And if you strip the noise, if you strip out the position of the opposition throughout this period of the history, what I call the cloud that they have brought over progress, etc. If you remove all of those things, you will see a clear pattern here. If you strip the lies out, the propaganda, and everything else, you will see that every single time we've been in office, the country has moved upwards. In the pre-independence period, the PPP had a limited self-government, internal self-government. And you will see that some of the things that people use until today that were part of the social formation of this country, that focus on upgrading Guyanese, giving them greater pride and dignity and freedom, were built in that period. The first industrial estate in the country at Rumveld. This was even on the colonial period to build an indigenous private sector. The Guyana School of Agriculture, the University of Guyana was started in that period. There are a lot, the MMA scheme, and the Black Bush Polder scheme rather, the Black Bush Polder. A lot of these things were done and we didn't have full reign. And then ACNUR came into office and they had a long period And if you look at the end point of the 28 years, you would see our country took a steep dive downwards. And we spent 23 years building up back again from very low depths, from a bankrupt country. And it had 5 years and we saw a downward dip again. And we're back here now again, and we're looking forward to the future being brighter. We're tackling many of the concerns that and the plans that we've laid out before, but we didn't have the resources to achieve. Now with the oil and gas sector, we can do so. And so that is what they should expect of us. We are not going to be distracted by the side shows, the freak shows, the clown shows that some of them put on from APNU. Like today I heard they had a press conference with some of the so-called leaders from Region 10 and some of the MPs, and it was a clown show. And anybody who really is serious can see through people. Can you imagine a figure talking about probity in government when he was the beneficiary, he and his family members, brother, the beneficiary of large tracts of land that were illegally, in my view, handed over to them after the government, they had lost the government by Jordan. Large sums from the SLED program that went to his family, that was more than maybe the grant now we're giving. His family got the equivalent of 50 persons, what 50 persons get in one grant. And lots of other things of that nature. Today, talking about one guy who is related to the PPP. First, I thought we didn't have PPP supporters in Linden, that because they create the impression that the PPP is an all-Indian party. But now they're saying we're giving to our black supporters in Linden a contract. Now we will examine for some rental. We'll examine the contract because we should make sure that things are transparently done. But that contract went to a public tender. Unlike when they were in office, they took a house, gave one of their supporters, Larry Singh, without any tender, $25 million. He bought a property, an advance they gave him. He bought a property and then rented it back to the government at $12 million a month without any tender. And Figueroa and all of the others know this. So, and then they talk about discrimination. In this case, this is an Afro-Guyanese guy got under the PPP. A contract that is smaller to a public tender. But if it's excessive, we can commit to looking at it. But it's just who the messenger is. The low-life sort of behavior from Figueroa and the others, where they behave holier than thou. And the 5 years when they were in office in Region 10, they spent less time on the ground than now they're spending in opposition, going around trying to block development initiatives in that region, to try to block. So the regional chairman doesn't want part-time jobs because we're going to put in maybe 1,000 part-time jobs where people will get $40,000 a month and work 10 days. 1,000 families will get these jobs. They don't want part-time, they want full-time jobs. But APNU took away jobs from the community. Didn't do that. They're opposed to infrastructure, urging people to squat in an area where we're building a road. So for 400 families now will get a plot of land and a house there. They don't want that to happen. Because if that happens, it shows the PPP is making progress. So that is the clown show that we have had and that we can expect from APNU. And people should ignore that. When I went to Linden, what people can expect, or all the parts of the country, Berbice, Region 2, Region 5, we said to people, any one of you want to study, any Guyanese and you want to study, tertiary education or you want to do a technical education, the state will pay for your study through a scholarship program, through the goal. That is what they can expect from us. Not only 5 ministers on the APNU, and like Simona Brooks, our children getting $13 million to study, 2 of them, and they were not even Guyana scholars. There's non-ministers and their children getting this. This is for the whole country. That is what they can expect. APNU supporters as well as all our supporters, the whole country can expect. Working to educate all of our people. Building the hospitals, they will be built everywhere. In Linden, we are upgrading New Amsterdam, but all the hospitals in Skeldon or Bath Settlement or Tushin, building new hospitals. That is what they can expect from us. So you will hear a lot from the sideshow. Strip all of that out. Like Ramjatan recently went on a program, and he said the 2 best things they could have done in APNU was to close the sugar industry. Imagine this guy's making a virtue out of taking away 7,000 jobs from people and putting them on the breadline. Claiming they didn't have money, but they were busy spending money on themselves. Billions of dollars on food in government, rentals for government, fancy things, travel for government, medical insurance for ministers and their families that we don't have now. We stopped that under the new PPP government out there abroad. That's where they were spending. So he makes that a virtue, taking away 7,000 jobs from people and putting this on the breadline. And the second greatest thing he said they did for Guyana was to sign the Exxon agreement. Now, people believe that they discovered oil. It's not that he's saying that we helped to bring the oil industry to Guyana, because that didn't happen under APNU. The people came here under the PP, they explored, they found oil before APNU got into office. He's saying the best thing they did was to sign that lopsided Trotman agreement. These are the 2 virtues. When you see those things, you realize that how bare, how sterile the opposition environment is in this country from a policy perspective. You can't expect any real engagement on policy. You will accept a lot of nonsense and hypocritical assertions. It's as though these people believe that this country never experienced the 5 years of APNU just recently. The way they talk now, they're now holier than thou. They're church-going people once again. They were the biggest criminals, thieves. They transfer tons of land to themselves and their families and their friends. Now you see us having to try to get back some of those resources. Ministers and their families, you remember Cathy Hughes and the Minister of Housing, their own companies were doing business in their ministries, and the ministers were signing the checks for their own companies. They forget that. They forget about Patterson and all of them, and the others taking money from state agencies to buy jewelry and everything for themselves. They on the tendering side, they practically didn't tender, supported all the tender rules. They spent $419 billion without parliamentary oversight, tried to rig the elections, blatant stealing of the elections. And it's as though they behave that they don't have a history. And they have 2 histories. And Norton knows that very well, because he grew up in the PNC. He cut his teeth in the PNC. Just a few minutes of conversing with him told me quite a lot about him. In fact,
share that experience, what it was like, please.
So let me break that down.
A lot of people, there was a short video and I spoke about it this morning, but a lot of people are trying to understand what really went on there.
Yeah, well, after I finished speaking, I noticed he was there and he was hanging around the fringes. Nobody really wanted to talk to him much. So I decided to be generous and go over and say hello to him, because he looked a bit lost in that environment. You know, he couldn't get to speak and sprout his nonsense, so he was looking a bit out of place in a corner. So I wanted to believe, I wanted to really check, because I've not had a chance to engage him one-on-one before in any major way, maybe a passing hello or sometime in the last 20-something years. But I always knew he was a junior functionary, both in the party and in the government. So I wanted to see if he could rise to the big occasion. Well, it was very disappointing. I don't think he is ready for the big league. He's very thrilled, complaining, can't stick with one issue at a time, has a high opinion of himself, is and in the process ignores all facts. So we started off with a friendly banter about region, what is going on in the country. He was saying in Region 10, we're undermining local government. So I pointed out to him that it's duplicitous of him to even say that at least Region 10, the RDC is functioning. We have allocated this year more money in the budget than any year under the AFNU for Region 10. And they don't share the same experience that we've had in the last 5 years. So I pointed out in Region 5, where the PPP won, that when the new REO came, Morris, about 4 years he spent here, that in those 4 years, they've had a handful of less than maybe 10 meetings, maybe 4 or 5 meetings that were held by the RDC, because they disrupted every sitting of the RDC. For 5 years, they practically disrupted every sitting of the RDC. So in that region, the RDC couldn't function. They elected representatives, even in an oversight role, because the REO still has fiduciary responsibility as an accounting officer for the region. So I said, contrast the behavior here. In this region, just in the last 5 years, you couldn't even meet. At least in Region 10, they're meeting, and they have a large program, and we have allocated more money. He was disputing what took place in Region 5. Turned out he didn't know much about it, but he didn't want to talk about that. So for him, he will ignore every fact if it doesn't suit his narrative. And his narrative is about discrimination. Doesn't have any other narrative. Not on policy, it's only about discrimination. But it's a jaundiced view. It's not fact-based. We've been calling for fact-based. So then we meandered on to some other topics along the way. And we happened upon the elections. So the discussion was about, he said he would like to debate the order that was promulgated by GCOM, that the observers, that we didn't follow the order. So I pointed out that there was the Representation of the People Act pointed out about how recount should take place. And in any case, every one of the international community their report pointed to a PPP victory, and that even the statements of Paul that Lowenfield finally submitted to the CCJ, to the Chief Justice, showed a PPP victory. So he said, no, he wants to debate some order. So I thought that he was going to follow the party line on the matter, that they won the elections, which is a stupid line because nobody believes them. But he was doing it in a perfunctory manner. This guy is deeply invested in the rigging. It's part of his DNA. He grew up in the PNC. So I thought, being a junior player that he was in the last elections, that he would create some smart distance between himself and the stupidity of the rhetoric that they won the elections. He embraced it wholeheartedly. It was shocking. But I realized that he has nothing else to offer. And then he further said, he has the SOPs that show they won the elections. I almost fainted from surprise.
I could only see the headline. Jagdeo almost fainted from surprise.
Yeah, that he has these SOPs, because we're joking around, or you give me the SOPs, we'll have your debate on this stupid thing. Because to debate a guy like that lives in another world, who then went on to say, I need to debate because every donor report pointed out that Abner won the elections. So I'm just like, I wonder if I'm living in an alternate universe and we're not on planet Earth, that I'm meeting another version of Norton elsewhere, and there was another donor group that put out a different report. For a moment I had to look around again. This man said that all the donors were saying that the elections were rigged.
When you're looking around, did you notice the American ambassador?
Yes.
The European Union
They
ambassador?
were all there.
Who were all present when the rigging was happening?
Exactly. I look around, but I was just for a moment like wondering, like we entered fairy tale land. So he wants to debate all of that. How could any sane person, enter such a debate? It's like with a madman, insane, a person who can't even recognize that the entire world believes that they lost the election. The statements of Paul. He even said the CCJ. I said the CCJ pointed this out. He said, we're in the CCJ decisions. The CCJ had to point out that Lowenfield had no right to unilaterally remove 175,000 votes from the PPP. That was part of the rigging. The CCJ had to reverse it. And so, it was very strange to me. So now, since he has these winning SOPs and he's keeping them, I'm hoping that the press will ask him, Nazima Raghubir and the others, mainstream media, will ask him to release the SOPs that he has that show that they won, because they're in his possession now. He has them. So I think that's the big story. And then he had indicated he wanted to discuss some other issues with the president. So part of engaging was like feeling out if it's sensible, if he had sensible things to say. And he has no sensible thing to engage in any other discussion except the nonsense about discrimination. He has nothing sensible to
So
offer.
do you see an engagement
So
between
I'm
leaders?
sure that there will be an engagement with the president from a constitutional to ensure that there is a discussion on the statutory functions that both the president and the leader of the opposition have to discharge by the constitution. There will be that. But beyond that, he has nothing to offer this country nor his supporters, except living in this fairyland, talking a lot of nonsense, hoping to mislead people, mislead them by rhetoric that sounds good to him because he lives in a cocoon, a self-created world. But other people, when that rhetoric breaches the cocoon, people question the sanity of what has been said. And I too question whether any person who reasonably wants to craft a winning strategy. So he keeps saying government in waiting. He'll be waiting a long time with that strategy. So it was a very interesting engagement last night, and for me it served its purpose. I thought this guy could emerge out of the small league in which he has been playing, and rise to the occasion. He remains firmly rooted in the Reagan mindset. He's a product of the school of Reagan, a product of the school of discrimination, the school that says the only way you can win in this country is if you make people feel insecure, Afro-Guyanese, insecure. So everything that the PPP does, you will try to sabotage, and that's the process. They're very active around in Region 10, hoping to sabotage every development effort. Stop the roads being built. We don't want 1,000 jobs because they're just part-time, don't do anything in this region. They want people in Region 10 not to share the progress in the country, so then they can claim, oh, you were discriminated against. They're not happy when we are resolving people's issues. They're not lobbying for anyone, the government, to spend more. In fact, they want us to spend less. Rhetorically, they argue for that, but they'll be happy if we pay very little attention to these regions. So,
Dr. Jagdeo, as comical as it has been, and advantageous for the PPP, because it seems that the opposition, unlike the importance of a government to push back an opposition and an opposition to hold a government accountable for the next election, it seems that the opposition will disintegrate, by itself. And as comical as it looks and advantageous it is to you, their behavior, how do you see the government? Because there's an importance to ensure that every Guyanese, the president wants to see every Guyanese benefit from the progress. Is the administration going to be putting things in place to reach out more to opposition supporters now, since the opposition themselves do not lobby for their supporters?
And that is evident in our program. It started off with that. So we were in all across the country in areas that supported us, in areas that did not support us, to ensure that people there, the children there, have access to education, the scholarships, jobs, training, everything else. So we'll be working in all the areas. We made that clear from the beginning. So they will have a very active task running around, trying to sabotage this everywhere, what is happening, the progress. And people should just ask them. The people of Linden should really ask, where were you, Norton, in the 5 years? Where was Granger? Where was the party? Why is it that only a few big people benefited from this. All the land went to the Lowenfields and the Figueres and the party activists. Now the PPP is trying to give land, build 1,000 homes for ordinary people. Why are you trying to sabotage it? Why are you trying? That's what people should ask them. When you didn't provide any scholarships, now the people are accepting for yourselves, you and your families. There's the leadership. Now the PP is trying to provide through the GOAL program thousands of scholarships here. Where were you? You didn't provide jobs. Now they're providing, at least at the beginning, 1,000 maybe part-time jobs. So for 1,000 families. Why are you trying to sabotage it? You're the only ones who got the jobs in the period. That's what people should be asking them. These are the questions. So when they walk around trying to sabotage every initiative. But so this is, people have to also in those communities recognize that it's either they want the progress or the rhetoric. You will get a lot of the rhetoric from PNC when you're in opposition. In government, you wouldn't see that. But you can if you want that, that's fine. Or you want to make progress. If you want progress, you want to see real things happen, and you work with the PPP.
Dr. Jagdeo, in a past time, and this is you as the General Secretary of the PPP, the man behind it, the mechanism, the party mechanism. In a past time, history shows Linden to be very aggressive. Recently, I've looked at videos where houses were squatters' houses were being demolished, removed, and it's basically turned out to be noise because you have 12 persons with issues who might have been advised to go there and place themselves in a position to stop the protest.
Yeah.
But you also have 400 people in waiting, Lindeners in waiting. Do you think because of this that you're seeing, attempts, the opposition leader went to Linden, tried to tell people that energy prices are going to be raised, electricity prices, they tried with nurses, there's a number of different plans they're putting in place to create unrest. Linden knowing to be very aggressive. Do you think you're getting, you're making inroads with Linden? Do you see?
So the thing is that you don't often get the political support. No matter, even if the area makes progress, but a government can't only work for political support, that people vote for you. So that's the only motivation for you to work. Ideally, that would be so. As General Secretary of the party, I wish everybody who make progress, including in these committees, would vote PPP. But we did make some progress. In 2006, 1 in 4 persons in the region can vote at PPP. 1 in 4 persons. But they have been able through their lives because they live in the communities and they're very insidious with their lives. If people examine only on track record, more people should shun the PNC totally. They were closing the bauxite industry through Minproc. Minproc, an Australian company that brought it to close the bauxite. We kept it going. We built a new hospital. We built 4 schools in the area, paved the roads. Amelia's Ward housing scheme, where thousands of homes are now, that was worked out bauxite land. Block 22 the same. We built thriving new schemes in the area. Built a call center. West Watuka, we opened the road into agricultural lands. We put in the LEAF program, LEND program for small loans, all of that. APNU practically did nothing. Practically did nothing. If people look on that alone, we expect greater votes. But That's not how it works, because the racism, the insidious, everything we do. So they know that the jobs will be good for the people in India. So they're already working now on undermining that initiative that will bring 1,000, give employment to 1,000 people. So they know that the 400 people and ultimately 1,000 will benefit from housing under the PP in these 5 years, houses. So they now want to create confusion. Then they will go to the 400 that they had nothing to do with and say they caused us to spend the money here, although they had nothing to do with it. So this is their modus operandi. It's not new. And we expect that they will continue to do this, to undermine every initiative. But when they're in office, they only focus on themselves. You ask the people of Linden, who made the most progress? It's only the people who are connected politically. The Figueres and the others. They got the money all from the government initiative, land, everything else for themselves, not the ordinary people.
Dr. Jagdeo, sometimes it could, and I think this happens to opposition supporters, just seeing them operate, like the instance with the opposition leader last night, creates some bit of confusion and frustration that comes in people's lives and creates that heaviness on you. Looking at the brighter side of things, I know every time we have a discussion, every time you have an outreach, there are new things that the government is offering. The government sings a chorus of progress. How has the government been able to keep up with the outreaches as the issues? I go on some of the outreaches sometimes, but the follow-ups, how have you been able to be managing that and ensuring results come from these outreaches?
So we have created a unit at the Office of the President to follow up, regardless of whether the issues are for the ministries. So even if the issue is a housing issue, we have a unit now that we've just created to follow up. They have to, so just this morning I had a report from them. So they told me in Essequibo 44 issues have been resolved so far. Since I came back from Essequibo, the contract for the Pomeroon, the dredging has been awarded. That's big impact. The cereal plant reopened. Now we're about to contract the people for the part-time jobs because we have all the applications in. So it's actually more than about 800 to 1,000, nearly 2,000 now in Essequibo because of the distance and the lack of jobs there. So we're moving on those big initiatives that will affect large numbers of people. But even on the private initiatives, now we have a difficulty because today I discovered that some of the phone numbers we took were wrong. So either people give us, maybe in the confusion, a wrong number, or the people recording their issues had a wrong number. So we have to try to fix that. We have some names, so we'll try to track those people down. Not all the issues can be resolved, but I want people to know we'll follow up on it. So for example, if you have 10 contributions and it requires over 700 to get NIS, there's nothing we can do. We can't tell the NIS to give you a pension because all the others who've contributed, over the years, 30 years, they would get a pension. So we would not be able, but we'd follow up for you and call you back and give you the answer why we can't fix it. So we still have issues. From Linden, they told me over 1,000 issues. Burby's over 1,000 issues, maybe a few hundred in region 5. So they're documenting every issue and making calls now. So people will expect a call from the government. We want to follow up on every issue. And at some point in the time, when we go back, if they didn't receive a call from us, then of course the next wave they can come to the meetings and say, I didn't know nobody called. So that is the follow-up mechanism. Minister Rodriguez and Indar, they've been brought over to the office of the president for 2 weeks to assist with the process of following up with people, making sure that we're tracking all those issues raised there. So I see a lot of people complaining, oh, the people came and criticized the government and stuff like that. That was the idea for the retreat, to be free, uncensored, to come to the meeting, and whether you support the government or not, or had something favorable or not to say, to give people a chance to speak. And you just imagine an APNU operating in that environment. They wouldn't even do it in a support area, much less in areas that don't support them. APNU never believe in dealing with people on the ground. And so it's essentially part of our staying in touch with people, both at a consultative end and a participatory end.
Dr. Jagdeo, I think we've covered a lot, and in the hope of ensuring your unit addressing the people issues continue.
No, that's important. And also, I think a lot of you see in the newspapers every single day almost a resurrection of these matters, like Patterson talking about PPDI. Patterson practically ran the GPL for a long while because there was no board there. He deliberately kept it that way so he could have made all the critical decisions. We had some of the most intransparent tendering procedures at GPL. They put in no new capacity for the year. He made the power grid now that we're trying to fix didn't really evolve, or the generating capacity from 2014 to 2020. When the price for fuel dropped to about $28 a barrel from $120 a barrel in 2014, they didn't adjust the prices downwards. They kept the money and they squandered the money. Squandered it. So they were making billions of dollars because the price for fuel fell. And GPL had the same old rates. So Patterson shouldn't even talk about PPDI. And that bothers me a lot. And I saw Mike McCormack saying they're being intimidated, the policy forum, being intimidated by the government. This is a free country. We're accessible than most governments in the world. Not just to the media, but on the ground. Accessible to people on the ground, coming back to the outreaches. Some of these NGOs are not even accessible to the 4 members that they have, or 2 members like his organization. They're not even accessible to them, much less to a wider set of people. And what has happened with the policy forum is, and we need to call this out, he's been issuing statements, jaundiced statements, reflecting his own partisan view on behalf of the policy forum, like saying one issue, the government is moving too fast and not consulting with them and all of that. And the members who make up the policy forum made it clear that they had not even seen these statements. So obviously now, because he has no credibility, they've seen his agenda, that it's an anti-government agenda. So they want to have no part of him, like the Society for the Blind. He was preying on them, issuing statements in their name that they had no part of, didn't see, didn't agree to. And now obviously he's getting a resistance from those other groups in the policy forum So he thinks it's a government creating the problem. We got to call out these societies. I heard the Press Association, the whole topic was about the interviews I give to you. Now, I do press conferences. I speak with reporters from almost any media house. They have access to me. But they want to tell me who I must speak with now, too. And it reflects their own bias against the government sometimes. The bias there, and it's no secret. Anybody who has observed the media landscape for the past years, they know the people who under ACNU, when you had the most egregious breaches of freedom, the Cybercrime Act, now we're getting criticized for that. The same people who were silent about the Cybercrime Act, the same media houses are now bringing it up. The same people were silent when they tried to rig the elections, the press, the so-called independent press. The same ones who were silent when they tried to appoint illegally a head of GCOM, or sided with them, are now trying to reinvent themselves as independent. We know who stood on the side of freedom and democracy, the which media. It was the mainstream newspapers, not the Chronicle at that time. It was the Starbrook, the Kaichor, the Guyana Times, and then a few of the other media houses, and particularly the online media and the some of the social commentators. They stood up when it mattered. They were the voice, the balanced voice, the voice of reason, not these sycophants who now reinvent themselves and try to portray themselves as the guardian of press freedom in this country. It's sickening. It's very sickening. And if we don't take this on, unfortunately, that impression will persist. That somehow they are the decent voices in our society. They are pro-PNC, would suck up the PNC, as one of your panelists pointed out, going to press conferences and addressing the leader of the opposition as comrade leader. That is that's the cloth from which they're cut. So for one moment, and I'm glad that we facilitated the forum for press freedom and discussion, because people were free to express their views, critical of the government, and all people didn't have to agree with that sort of engagement, but they had the freedom to say it. And so we will make sure that people have access, but nobody is going to tell me who I'm going to speak with. I think I earn the right to, as a citizen of this country and in public life, been long enough in public life at various positions of leadership, to determine to whom I want to speak and on what topic. And nobody's going to take that right away from me. I know, because I grew up in a society when I was a youngster that people went to jail for speaking what they believe in. So nobody's going to take that right away from me.
Dr. Jagdeo, just to ensure your last point is not watered down and it soaks in properly, I think we will close this interview.
Okay.
I want to thank you for this opportunity. I want to thank the viewers for your patience, and I'm hoping you understand the importance for transparency and accountability with the government. Moreover, since there's no strong opposition to guide or nudge the government in the right direction, we, the people, have to now come and be the opposition for ourselves. Thanks once again.